Lord, may the words that I have to share be acceptable to you and speak to everyone here. Amen. God's invitation to wholeness. That's the subject of this week, and the line that opened the reading from Archbishop Desmond Tutu is, God's invitation to wholeness always includes more than ourselves. But, stepping back a minute, and you'll be shocked to discover, those who watch my sermons, that this is a 3-part sermon. So what is wholeness? And then how do we separate ourselves from wholeness? And then how can we recognise and accept God's offer through that invitation? So, a little bit on what is wholeness. And this is part about the Philippians passage, but I'm going to step back from that. Because is it being who we were created to be? Maybe it's about living a fulfilled life. And those who were in the midweek group this week, we talked about living a half-filled life or living a fully fulfilled life. And we weren't entirely sure, all of us, that we knew what that meant. And some of us were kind of thinking that maybe we would figure it out in time. And we had various ideas around the table, but ultimately there is a question in our hearts about what that wholeness might be. But what I think that Desmond Tutu, and actually I think Philippians is referring to it as well, is about being who we were created to be. And if I look at, through the millennia, how do humans behave, how do humans interact, what is the core of what it is to be a human being? And we don't always live up to it. But human beings have lived in communities, in families, working together in teams to benefit the group as a whole. If you look at indigenous societies today, they still work like that. And if you look, and that's irrespective of where in the world you are or anything else. Now, there have also always been bad things. There's always been disease. There has always been some degree of fighting. I'm afraid, while we may be new to things with, AK-47s appearing in schools might be new, but the problem of teenage people and of young adults fighting each other, and indeed older adults fighting each other, and things is nothing new. But throughout all of that, humans have sought connections with each other. We have always lived in groups which are wider than our natural families. We've always formed circles and communities of mutual support. And we have always sought a connection with the divine. Whether that is known and described as a connection with Mother Earth or with some other form of deity, every society has some kind of deity that it looks up to. Sorry, I'm being distracted. I will try my best. I know that I need my circle of friends. They are almost all women, but the purpose that they serve is to encourage and sustain me, to help me know who I am, to help me know that I am strong enough, even when I don't believe it. That the difficult times will pass, that I will survive, and most importantly, that I am loved. Without that circle, I do not feel whole. Without the things in my life, I do not feel whole. Without the work that I do, without making a difference, without connecting with other people, I do not feel whole. And that's not to say that I'm an extrovert who likes to be in the room with people all of the time. There are distinct moments when I require quiet, peace, and no one else around. So this is not about my personality, but it is about that basic need to have other people in my life. And to have God in my life. to have that something else that gives me a purpose. But we consistently separate ourselves from that. We live in a world of doubt and fear and worry. Now, I am an expert worrier. One of my friends will tell you that if I have anything go slightly wrong, it will need a new roof. The origin of that story is when someone did a damage to my car, and I had talked to myself before we'd even gone to the garage to have it looked at, that not only would it need a new bumper and a new boot door, but it would also need a new roof. Clearly, I was exaggerating. But we all have something in us that says we are pre-programmed to worry. Whether it's worrying about money or worrying about housing, worrying about jobs, worrying about anything. We all have some level of doubt in ourselves. Doubt that we are good enough. Doubt that we can do something that we're about to do. Doubt that our lives will work out. We all have some degree of fear. Not everybody is afraid of zombies, but I am afraid of zombies. Most human beings are afraid of snakes and spiders. But lots of us have fears that have no rational basis. Lots of us have fears about what will happen next. Fears about other people in our lives and what they might do. Fears about how we will do things. Some of those fears, doubts and worries are good for us because they push us to do better, to try harder. But actually, all of them, at the moment that we experience them, make us feel less than whole. They create a gap between how we perceive ourselves in that moment and how we would like to perceive ourselves, or how we would like other people to perceive us. And ultimately, they mean that we are not fully relying on God. Because instead of praying and trusting God, we are letting that worry, that fear, that doubt get in the way. I have a candle that was given to me that says, "Let go and let God." It was a phrase that Reverend Elder Darlene Garner used when this church was going through a crisis, and that I was not responsible for controlling the outcome of the situation. I was not responsible for fixing everything. I had to let go and let God. I'm still not very good at it. I still fear things. I still have doubts about myself. I still need reassurance. And I try harder to pray. In the words of Philippians, don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's not always easy. But we can work on those things that are within ourselves. But in order to accept that and to trust God, we have to recognize God's invitation. Because I don't think it's as simple as just accepting that invitation to wholeness. I think there is a distinct part of it where we don't recognize that invitation. We know the word. We know that we are supposed to knock and the door will be opened unto us. We know that if we trust in God, all things will be well. We have all of these stock phrases that come to us, some biblical, some from other people. And yet we still worry. We still don't pray. We still fear and doubt. So how do we recognize God? How do we recognize that invitation? Maybe it's the hand that's held out to us when we can't take a step forward, either physical or metaphorical. Maybe it's the person who offers us a hug because we just look a little bit sad, or a blanket because we're cold. Maybe it's the quiet space that's given freely to allow someone to grow. Maybe it's as dramatic as the spontaneous armistice on Christmas Day in 1914. In the heat of the bad and the worst that humanity could be, human beings reached out to each other and said, "Here is my hand." Is it the people who form walls of prayers to protect places of worship during riots? Is it the people who stand up for their friends? Is it the friend who doesn't look at their schedule and just says, "Yes, I can"? Those are the moments where those invitations are real. Because no matter how many times we read our Bibles and it says, "Do not worry, pray. Bring your worries to the foot of the cross." No matter how many times we read that, we still don't see it. Because reading it, for most of us, does not touch our hearts. It is in the human beings around us who speak God's heart and give us those invitations that help us take that step. And it doesn't matter that we are in horrible situations, that our lives are not what we want them to be. Coming back to Philippians. If we focus on the things that are true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, and gracious, if we look at the best, not the worst, if we look at the beautiful, not the ugly, if we look at the things to praise, not the things to curse. I have a friend who has a 7-week-old baby who's decided that, 2 hours sleep is sufficient every night. She could focus on how tired she is. She could focus on how difficult it is to be a parent of a small baby. Or, and this is what actually happens, when her daughter smiles at her, she falls in love again. Because no matter how tired she gets, that smile is enough. The people, we know how that works, don't we? There are moments in life where things are really bad and we can see no way through. But there is someone there with us, and that's what you can focus on. If we look for the good in those moments, if we look for that hand reaching out to help us, we will see it. And we need to say yes to those helping hands, and that's sometimes difficult. Because some of us, like me, can be a little control freakish. And so, it's not always easy to say yes to the person who wants to help me because they want to help me their way, not my way. We need to say yes to prayer. We need to make the time to talk to God, to listen to God, to listen to our own hearts. We need to say no to the things that drag us down. For me, that means saying no to playing all the games that my iPad could possibly have for me to play. Because if I do that, then I don't have the time to pray, I don't have the time to listen, and I don't have the time to chat with the people who make me feel better. So, if we're going to say yes to God's invitation to wholeness, and we're going to say yes to it including more than just ourselves, focusing less on me and more on us, we need to choose to see the good things. We need to choose to name them. And we need to choose to store them up for later. So, the post-it notes and the pens are in case you have some good things that you wish to make notes of to store up for later. If there are things about where you are in life that you wish at this moment to make a note of, or at any point in this service, I encourage you to do that, because that is how you encourage yourself. And if you are feeling very generous and have a lovely thing to say about someone else in this room, then that's also good, because that is how we encourage each other. That is how we become God's invitation to others. And it's wonderful that we have this smiling, gurgling child who wishes to share the joy with those around him. Because we are a community and we live in this. And God's invitation to part of our wholeness, and I'm watching everyone, and nobody here is unable to smile right now. Right? That's part of the invitation. Part of the wholeness, no matter how tired we were when we were sat here a moment ago, no matter how grumpy we are at the end of our day, or how difficult our Sunday has been, how tired, none of that is mattering right now, because everybody is smiling back and saying hello. And we all feel better because of it, at some level. Now that, so, choose to see the good things. Choose to name them for yourself and for others, and choose to store them up.